Okay, here's the thread in question, Scenario Champions. The OP, a guy by the name of Baba Nim. He has 35 posts, and he brings up the issue of scenario spawn point guards, which he calls the champions, but whatever name you want to call them. And he raises the issue of why can't they just do their jobs? Why are they so ineffective? Why do they do nothing? How did that all come about? Can we get guards that actually do their jobs? Okay, this is not a new issue. This has been discussed many times. I discussed it many times on the Top Monitor podcast back when we were doing those on a regular basis. And the short version of how we got to this point now, where people are still bringing up or are initiating threads asking about the scenario camp guards. The short version of how we got here is it's all fruit of the same poisonous tree. It all dates back to the ranked solo experience and the fact that rather than just make one scenario to have all the ranked battles in, they changed every scenario to accommodate ranked. That was a mistake, and with all the steps that went in between, this is what we have now, the system that's in place, where there are barriers in certain SCs where the camp guards have been either entirely removed or are so far back as to be completely irrelevant. That's all I want to say about that because it's been talked about so many times before. But I do want to take a couple minutes and talk about this. This is post number 6, and Bob and Dim comes in to reinforce a couple of points and ask another question. And he says here, how did putting a wall barrier improve the experience in any way versus simply having well-placed guards like it was on the original game? Well, the short answer to that is it doesn't improve the experience. There are a lot of people who've talked about the fact that the barriers that went up in some of these SCs make absolutely no sense. And Serpent's Passage is the prime example, just to stick with one, but it certainly isn't the only SC. There are barriers in high. Last time I played High Pass, they put barriers in there for some stupid reason. Okay, maybe I shouldn't use the word stupid, but for some reason, there are barriers. You couldn't get back in the gates prior to that anyway. But I digress. All right. It doesn't improve the experience. There are a lot of people who've talked about the fact that removing the guards has taken away a strategy, a scenario strategy that I've used myself in years past to help turn the tide of a fight against those who have pushed you all the way back. That's now been removed from the game. That option to do that has been removed from the game. And it just doesn't make any sense to have guards in a scenario that are completely, that even if a Destro guy lands right next to him, or in the Destro camp, if an Order guy gets punted and lands right next to him, they will do nothing. And I've seen this myself, and it's actually there's an example of this in one of the Top Monitor podcasts, a video example. So the experience doesn't improve scenario play. The barriers, the completely irrelevant nature of the guards, none of that improves the experience. So why are they sticking with it? Okay, that is the next logical question. If the placement of the barriers and the irrelevancy of the guards does not improve the experience of scenario play, why are they sticking with it? That's a logical progression from which to attempt to address the question. And at this point, I have two potential answers. One is because they're too busy doing other things to address this right now. And I have to give that its due. Because, the guys who work on this stuff, they're doing it. We've all heard this before many, many times. Oh, wait. What's this? Sorry, I don't know how that got in there. It just came up. I don't know how that got in there. All right, never mind. But anyway, the guys who do this, they're working on their own dime, and we've heard this 1,000 times before. They're all volunteers. We should all beg, we should all grovel, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. And all that's true, okay? And we should all be grateful, and I am. So I understand that they have limited time to work on all this stuff, and they can't do it all at once, and some things have to take priority. So that's the first reason why they have not addressed the issues in scenarios which have been articulated in this particular thread. There's another reason, another potential reason. And that is spite. At this point, I don't think they want to. I think scenarios have gotten some attention of late. The queuing system has been improved. And I think some of and I understand this. Don't get me wrong. I understand this. But I think it's certainly logical to just address the possibility that the guys who were doing all this coding are saying, look, we fixed the scenario, queue system. What do you guys want from us? Okay, we've done enough. We got other stuff to do. We're not gonna fix it. Just deal with it. If I had to choose between which possibility was the most probable, A, they're just too busy to deal with it right now, or B, they don't want to deal with it, I would choose B. And in that context, the player base are just going to have to put up with the scenario camp guards being completely useless and the barriers making absolutely no sense. And that's just the way it's going to be. As always, thanks for watching.
Next time on the Reckoning Monologues.
I stand before you as herald of the change.